ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. So Hare Krishna, good morning to everyone. So this is our third session, if I'm correct. So on last Saturday, we probably had a topic on the title of self-care. And today we're going to have a topic on the title of time management, a misnomer. However, before we proceed ahead, I just wanted to quickly reflect something on the topic that we discussed, titled as proactive leadership. Would anyone remember anything from the topic, proactive leadership? Anything comes to your mind? We discussed several case studies, but the main subject matter was about reactive leadership versus proactive leadership. Anyone remembers the example of a proactive leader and a reactive leader? We began our discussion with that case study. Nokia, yes. Stephen Ellop, we spoke about him. And remember what he said? We never did anything wrong. And I was making a point. Inaction is not a choice, is not an option. We always got to make a choice. To say that we did nothing wrong is almost like they missed out on learning, they missed out on changing, and thus they lost the opportunity at hand to make it big. They were the leading mobile supplier in the whole world. With a span of less than 5 years, they lost the whole market. And then I gave an example of a proactive leadership as Steve Jobs. We talked about it. And while having a discussion of this aspect of leadership, proactive, reactive, we talked about what determines responses. When we give response, when we don't give response, and the types of responses. For that, I gave you 2-3 case studies. Remember the story of Socrates and his angry wife? And we also gave an example of story of cap seller. So story of cap seller, 3 brothers, mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. If you all remember, Sattva, Rajyo, and Tamo, like that. And this was the most important slide for which I'm kind of doing a quick recap. And I would like you all to pay attention here. So for every situation that we have in our life, we give a response to it. And the response can vary according to the modes of mental nature or the modes of consciousness. But between this situation and the response lies a space. And this space is where our freedom lies. Freedom for success, freedom for making a right decision, freedom to progress in life. This space allows us to make the right choices and decisions. And so here we talked about proactive response. What is proactive response? Remember the example of Satto when he was in a trouble, when his caps were lost? He began to think about it. What is the solution? He was not harping on the problem. He was rather thinking about what is the solution, like that. So proactive response is action based on chosen values. And this is where I want to pay attention for all of you, values. Servant leadership is a big subject matter these days. Everyone talk about it. Even the politicians are talking about servant leadership, like that. Now, what is the concept of servant leadership? What's the concept of value-based decision? The idea is for a leadership, how many of you agree, if you have a leadership which genuinely cares for its dependents, how many of you say such a leadership is required and such a leadership is sought after? Somebody who genuinely cares for his dependents, employees, and whatnot. Is it a good example of leadership? How many of you would like to become that kind of a leader where you actually really care for the team members? And do you expect if you have that kind of leadership, you will have a far better support from your team? Yes or no? So here's the very important thing. When you talk about our ancient wisdom or our culture or tradition, our education was largely based on values. Skill was a side effort. Our education was not based on cultivating skills. There's no point of having a skills if you don't have the right values. All of you know about Second World War. All of you probably heard the name of Adolf Hitler. And all of you probably heard about Nazis camp. These are concentration camps where Hitler had created what we call as Nazis army, and the objective was to annihilate Jews. This is what was the goal and objective of it. And they would capture all the Jews, bring them in these camps which are out of the city, and then they would burn people alive, suffocate people alive, torture them to death. So one of the survivor of the Nazis camp, 1945, Second World War ended. And 1954, the survivor of the Second World War or the Nazis camp, he wrote a letter. It's a very interesting letter. And he wrote a letter about the state, about the situation or the state of our education. This is back in 1954. And he said, I was born as a Jew, I grew up as a Jew. No, I have no choice to decide what happens. However, the French with whom I grew up apparently joined the Nazis army and they only captured me. And he talks about his torture. He said, I was put into a hospital bed where without anesthesia, my body was cut open and live experiments were performed on my body by the most educated doctors. Doctors are supposed to save life, or doctors are supposed to, cause trouble to the patient. They're supposed to save life. That is a basic understanding. And then he said, the survivor of the Second World War, he said, this is the state of our education. People have got the skills, but they lack the value based on which the skill has to be utilized. So if you take a case of our culture and tradition in the past, for example, let's say Mahabharata, we have a copy of Bhagavad Gita here, that's a photo of Arjuna and Krishna on the chariot. Krishna wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj to be the king. It's not that Duryodhana was not a good diplomat or a politician or an administrator. He was good in all those, but he lacked that value. When it came upon his own selfish interest or self-interest, he did not give a damn about anyone. And the classic example is Krishna himself went to Duryodhan and to the Kauravas saying that if you cannot return the kingdom, at least give 5 villages. And Duryodhan said, nothing doing. And Krishna said, if well, you don't do it, you know that what's going to happen, there's going to be war. And Duryodhana said, yes, I know there will be a war. I want there to be a war. And I know all my people are willing to die for me. Do you see a sense of pride and arrogance over here? For his own self-interest, he wants everyone to die. And he's not defending anything. He's not defending his right. He's actually defending the stolen property. And the people from whom he stole, he wants to take everything away. And like this, Krishna was very clear, Duryodhana cannot be a king just because he does not care for the people who are trying to serve him. And if you look at it in this perspective, I like to quote Shashi Tharoor. Some of you might have heard the name of Shashi Tharoor. He's from Congress Party, from Kerala. He wrote a pretty interesting book, was published in 2016 or 17. I believe I have that reference here. Yeah. This is Inglorious Empire, What the British Did to India. This was the book was published, and he wrote something very interesting in this book. And I'm quoting a quotation, I'm having a quotation here. And he writes that until 17th century, it was later 17th century when Britishers started ruling India, probably mid 17th or early 18th century. And he gives statistics, and that has been proven by many, that until 17th century, Bharat's GDP was 35% GDP of the whole world. And then he writes, 35% GDP means India's GDP or Bharat's GDP was far more than the whole of Europe. So question comes, if we had such a great GDP, I mean, how can, we have been given a history lessons. We've been taught that Britishers brought education, Britishers introduced educational system. If everything was done by Britishers and they built the roads, they brought us the train, they built the ships and everything, etc., then how come this country, our ancestors, would have created an economy which contributed 35% GDP to the whole world? Any thoughts about it? If not that much, when Britishers left by 1947, any guesses? You're an MBA student, you should have the statistics. Any idea how much was the GDP of India when Britishers left? 1947. When they came, it was 35%. Of course, before Mughals came, India's GDP was more than 50%. But because they came and settled here, so GDP was not destroyed so much. Any idea how much was the GDP when India got independence? Yeah, it was approximately 2%. So my question to all of you, did the British rule give us, prosperity, or did they looted away all the prosperity from here? And that's the idea of colonization. That's a side subject matter. That's not my main point. But the main point is what contributed to such a great GDP for the country? And that was value based leadership. Now, let me give an example. How many of you have seen your parent or maybe forefather, let's say grandfather, if they joined particular company or a business, they stayed with that company for all their life. They never changed. How many have seen that? Have you ever wondered why it happened like this? Because there was also a lot of care offered by the company to the employee. Unlike today, today has become a very selfish relationship. In fact, the company doesn't even bother about the employee. It's all about the output. But it wasn't like even two generations before. Then talk about what would be in the 17th century. That's the importance of value-based leadership. That's the importance of value-based lifestyle. And that is what helps us build team. And I'll give you some more stats and figures for it. So this was a quick thought for it. What determines our responses? We talked about it. Mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. And what are the examples to remember for goodness, passion, ignorance? We gave an example from Ramayana. Who represents goodness? Vibhishan. Who represents mode of passion? Ravana. Who represents mode of ignorance? So with that example, at least theoretically, I've understood this concept. All right. So let's move forward and come to the topic for today. Procrastination to productivity. All right. So in this presentation, a topic for today, we're going to have two subject matters. First is the time management. What is time management? How does ancient wisdom looks at the concept of time management? And second, how to deal with the problem or the challenges of procrastinations and any solutions for it. So let's begin with time management. Time management, I'm giving a title as a misnomer. I'll explain you. How many of you have had an experience where you felt like there is a lot to do in my life, but time is often less? Please raise your hand. Hare Krishna. How many of you had that experience? There's so much to do, so many nice things to do. Somehow I'm not able to fill into it. Wish 24 hours could have been 25 hours. Why they had to make it 24 hours? एक घंटा एक मिल जाता, हफ्ते का 7 घंटा, महीने का 30 घंटा, कितना कुछ कर लेता मैं. बस अगर वही होता तो मैं पक्का सीईओ बन जाता. बस वो नहीं है तो उसी की कमी है. All mistake is of the time. All right. Have you ever faced any of the following situations in your life? Say yes and loudly. Have you ever felt I need more time? I want to enjoy my life more. I'm always running around. I never have time for myself. How many of you felt like that? All right. I'm always in crisis because I postpone too often. Okay. Yeah, well, your student life has just started. Don't worry. When you will have project work and assignment, we'll check it out. But that's a good thing. Okay. What about, okay, in essence, if in case our life is like this, where we're not able to accommodate activities and we're always finding time is short, so somewhere, somehow our life becomes like this. And the idea of this is, imagine you're running late to catch your flight or a train, you haven't packed your luggage, and what do? You just stuff into it and then just pack it. Somehow our life becomes like this when we have a lot of things to accommodate on a daily basis. It may be true for you today, may not be true for you today, but life will be like this someday if we don't pay attention to some of the time management tools. So when we talk about time management, would anyone like to give an answer in their language? What does time management means for you? How would you define time management? What does time management means? Yes? Okay, priority is very nice. So the subject matter is clear to some of you. Okay, anything else on time management? What does time management means? How will you manage your time? Any thoughts? The young man said priorities. Very good. Utilize best of 24 hours, somehow manage 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, and then save 1 hour by the end of the day. Increase your efficiency, work faster so that you can save some time here and there. Okay, that's also an idea. Anything else for time management? Yes? Huh? Work based on routine. Okay, you're saying something? A scheduling thing. So put things into the schedule and the time slots. All right. Yes? Accuracy. Okay. Doing things at the right time. So One thing I would like to define about time, oftentimes when the subject of time management, which means managing a time, first of all, we cannot manage time. As the gentleman here rightly said, we can manage priorities, not time. And that had been the concept as part of our Vedic understanding. Why we cannot control time or manage time. This is from Bhagavad Gita, 11th chapter, verse number 32. Krishna says, Kalosmi lokasya krit pravadho, which means, Arjuna, I am the time. Which means managing time or controlling time, you're trying to control or manage the Supreme Lord Himself. So that way, the concept is we cannot do it. What it means, I'll tell you in a short while. This is Vidurji speaking in Mahabharata and is describing 4 characteristics of time. And it's very interesting. And he says, Kalaha pachati bhutani, which means it destroys everything. Kalaha sangrate prajaha, whatever is born is killed by time. And then he says, Kalaha supteshu jagrati, when you are sleeping, time is ticking. Time never sleeps. And Kalohi durati kramaha, and time is insurmountable, which means you cannot control time. In fact, as a famous saying goes, you cannot purchase even a second by any amount of wealth, which means you cannot control time. That's the thing about it. So, what does it mean? We don't build the lives we want by saving time. We build the lives we want, and then time saves itself. So, it's not about saving time. It's all about putting things that we want to do and the time adjusts. Let me give you an example. It's a very famous case study of a young lady entrepreneur. She is a 32-year-old, of course, was a 32-year-old lady from New York who created a very successful business. And because of her work life and hectic schedule, she had developed a backache problem, a very serious backache problem. And she had to meet a doctor, and doctor recommended for the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks, she has to come for a physiotherapy session. She could manage for the first 2 or 3 weeks, and her secretary would schedule her times and meetings. And the 4th week, she couldn't manage to take out time and she didn't go for a physiotherapy session. She had 3 sessions or 2 sessions per week, and she couldn't do that. 5th week happened, again the same thing. And at this time, the doctor began to follow up with the patient. And the doctor said, if you're talking to the secretary, if your boss doesn't come, so whatever time she has spent in the first 3 weeks, that will also go in vain, because this physiotherapy session has to be done for the 6 weeks and whatnot. The secretary goes to the boss, the young entrepreneur, and she had one excuse. How many of you have ever done that? No time. How many of you have ever done that? Please raise your hand. No time. She would always have this. No time, no time, no time. And this was going on pretty long enough. And on that particular week, she came back home. It was Thursday evening. She came back home. Just like the floor is carpeted, in America, most of the houses are carpeted. And this was a New York upstate townhouse, which was on the 20th or the 30th floor apartment, very posh apartment. She lived alone there. She unlocked the door, entered the apartment. To her utter surprise and shock, the whole apartment was wet. It was flooded, not wet, it was flooded. And what had happened, her water filter had broken down, the pipe had broken down, because of which the water flooded the whole apartment. Which means all the carpet is wet. Now, what would you do? And if you know that if the carpet is wet and if you leave it like this, it begins to stink and it gets spoiled. Now, she had to make an immediate decision, and somehow the lady who didn't have a time for her physical well-being, no time, no time, no time, it took her almost 8 to 9 hours fixing that wet carpet. And then the psychiatrist, not psychiatrist, the physiotherapist, that doctor raises a very important question. And she said, isn't it interesting? The patient didn't have a time for to come and attend a 45 minutes physiotherapy session. But somehow she was able to take out time, approximately 8 to 9 hours, to fix the broken water pipe or the wet carpet. And it brings on an important, very important lesson, and that is time is highly elastic. We cannot make more time but time will stretch to accommodate what we choose to put into it. Because she decided that I'm going to fix it, the time extended or managed itself. And it is not about looking at the time, but looking at the activities, which means time management is all about identifying our priorities, just like that young man said, is about priorities. Key lessons. First, we should acknowledge it is not a matter of lacking time, it is that I don't want to do it. Let me ask you a question here. What was your experience when somebody told you, I don't have a time? Let's say you asked somebody something and somebody responded by saying that, I don't have a time. What was the first reaction would you have to this? What do you think of it? Any thoughts? Somebody says, well, I don't have a time. So what do you think of it? What does it indicate? Sorry? Kindly raise your hand so I understand from where this unmanifested sound is coming. So I should know the manifested person who's making the sound. So what happens? What is your reaction? What do you think about when a person says, I don't have a time? Any thoughts? Arrogant. Okay. इतना क्या करना होता है कि समय नहीं है? Okay. Anything else? करना नहीं चाहता. Okay. Is making an excuse. What else? There's more to it. Either he is busy or lazy. Anything else? Okay, let me put it the other way around. What happens to you the moment you say, I don't have a time? What does it indicate about yourself? Huh? Not interested? What else? Lack of time management, very nice. What else? Go deeper. I don't have a time. What it means? Huh? Postpone? What else? I don't have a time. Actually, it means I am servant of time. When time is available, then I am available. But time is not available, therefore I am not available. You are putting a victim mentality here. The moment you say, I don't have time, you're showing yourself so helpless that what can I do? There is no time in my life. If time will be there, I will be available. You have put time above yourself. Now let me change a little language. What if you have to give a response? Well, this is not my priority right now, but I shall attend it later on. What does it mean? Does it put it into a front seat where you are the driver, you are the controller now? Yes or no? The moment you say, this is not my priority, I will attend to it later on, which means you are the decision maker. The moment you say, I don't have a time, you say, I'm helpless. I'm a victim. So start taking control of your life. We should not be in the victim mentality that I don't have a time, but it's not my priority. And it can really change the way you look at things. And of course, also the way people look at you. The people will not call you lazy and crazy. When you say no time, they'll say he doesn't know how to manage time. But when you say this is not your priority, they will respect you, saying that, well, at least he or she is truthful and very clear what he or she wants in his or her life. Yes or no? Is a very important way of making the transition. All right. I can tell you, let me give an example. The first company for which I was interviewed by was Microsoft back in America. So Microsoft has 3 levels of interviews. The first level of interview which they have is for logical thinking or analysis. They will not ask you any technical role. If they're hiring for management role, they're hiring for engineering role, regardless of whatever role they want to hire you, they're going to have this logical interview where they'll put hypothetical situations to you. And now you have to give an answer. And this way, they filter out maximum of candidates. If you're not able to represent or present the idea or the solution properly, whatever education you have, according to them, is of no value. Now, I was interviewed for the role for which I didn't have a technical background because it was a campus interview. So I could easily clear the logical interview. But when it happened to technical interview, because I didn't have any background in that technical, because it was a computer engineering and I was from communication, electronics and communication, I didn't clear it. But I remembered very clearly the second round of interview, that person said, you had got the highest marks in the logical interview. That's the reason we gave you the priority, although knowing that you don't have a technical experience. And then that person said, if you're willing to learn, we are still willing to hire you. Why? Because we need people who have this critical analysis, who can think out of the box, who can solve problems, who can take responsibility of the life, who can take responsibility of the people, who can take responsibility of the project. Learning things and scoring marks is only good in college life, not in the real life. And real life situation, you have to have the ability to solve problems, and to be able to solve problem, you have to take control of your life in your hands. So please remember, do not say anymore, I don't have time. Rather, take a control of your life and say, this is not my priority. Or let me reconsider, and I'll come back to you after looking at my calendar if I can accommodate or not. At least, if not in student life, train yourself for professional life to speak like that. So, using this language reminds us that time is a choice. It implies that we have the power to fill our lives the things that deserve to be there. So, it's not about time management, it's about priority management. All of you probably would have known of this. And I'll give you a very famous and simple example of a flask where you have to add different items. Like what? Imagine you start putting in big rocks, then you add small stones or the stones to it, then you add sand or gravel, and then finally you add water to it. Looks like everything is fit into this flask. But now reverse the situation, wherein now you first put the water to it, then you add sand to it, then you put stones or pebbles to it, and then finally you start putting rocks to it. What's going to happen? You cannot fit in all the big rocks, which means we got to fit in the most important thing, the first in our life. And first in our life means it begins with today. There is a very famous management guru and a very successful CEO from one of the companies in Europe. He made a very profound statement. He said, the genius among us is not much different than others. The genius among us is not much different than others. The only difference is this genius invests time on daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis for self-improvement. And then very soon, he is face to face with an extraordinary. It all begins with baby steps, and that baby steps have to begin with today. Are we investing any time for the self-growth or self-improvement? This is called a student life. Student life is not about academics. You're still in. How many of you prior to coming here have worked, had professional experience? Anyone here? So some of you had professional experience. How many of you had more than 2 years of professional experience? You have more than 2 years of professional experience. Do you agree whatever you have gone through with academics has not much relevance in the real life situation? So please understand, although I'm a monk now, but I guide many managers and leaders, and plus I had been myself in a professional life. Your academics has, I'm not saying you should not pay attention to your academics. You should, because grades are also still considered to somewhat extent. But academics is not what going to create a life for you. You have to focus on your self-growth, and we have to develop the abilities of problem solving. So what happened now is we are not able to fit in all the rocks. That's the point. Which means effective time management lies in identifying the big rocks. Can you all have a pen and paper out? We're going to do some exercises now. All of you, please take out your pen and paper. And if you have your pen and paper, please write down the dates, write down the title of today's topic, and then we'll begin to have. So what I'm going to have or going to do now is some self-awareness exercise, some introspection. So it'll be important if you write down the date and the topic. And for this series, what we are doing, if you can maintain a proper diary or notes, that will help you in the long run. Anytime in the future, you can come back and look back at what we talked about it, particularly when you become professional. All these tips will really, really help. So all of you ready? So the first question for today, please write down, what are the big rocks in my life? Big rocks refers to the most important things that I got to be doing, that I need to attend to. So can you please think about and write down the question number one. What are the big rocks? मेरे जीवन में सबसे महत्वपूर्ण चीजें क्या हैं जो मुझे करनी है, उसके बारे में लिखिए. प्लीज लिस्ट डाउन 1 2 3 4 5 आइटम्स. Please write down. Don't write one or two, huh? I hope there will be more important things than one or two. Okay? At least there have to be four. There have to be four important things that got to be attending on everyday basis. That's what Krishna says in Gita. We'll tell you that in a short while. What are the most important rocks? हमारे जीवन में क्या सबसे महत्वपूर्ण चीजें हैं जो मुझे प्रतिदिन करनी चाहिए? Which means we have so many things to do in a day. All of you in the beginning of the presentation said, well, I wish I would have some time so I can accommodate, which means your day is definitely packed. You have too many activities. Among all those activities, what are the most important activities is my question to all of you. Among all those activities which you're saying has flooded your day because of which you have no time for yourself, among all those activities, can you list down the most important activities? And I'm asking you to only list down 4 activities. How many of you say it's so difficult? Why in the morning hour you have to ask a question about my life? My life is all good, let it be. You know, the self-introspection becomes sometimes challenging. All right. So let me introduce you to a concept which is unfortunately largely missed and not discussed. And I would request you a few minutes of complete attention and think about it if it is relevant or not. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita talks about the big rocks, and he says there are 4 dimensions of our life. Please draw 4 quadrants in your book. Please draw 4 quadrants in your book. What are the 4 dimensions of life? These are the most essential things that we got to be taking care. And if you don't take care of it, maybe superficially we may deny its existence, but deep within our heart we know that something is missing in our life. Therefore, there's a saying, "Ye dil mange more." You know, we're always hankering for something. And what are these 4 things? Please repeat after me. There are 4 L that Krishna talks about. The first, to live loudly, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy. What are these 4 L's, which are 4 dimensions of life? Let's take a look at it. First is called as physical quotient. That is need to live. In one of the first quadrant, you can write PQ and write to live. We all need good health. जैसे कहते हैं रोटी कपड़ा मकान. We all need food, shelter and clothing. We all need financial security. And all of you are working towards that, yes or no? So that our PQ is taken care. Agreed? Now, in terms of PQ also, you may be working towards your financial security. Financial security does not guarantee physical health. Yes or no? For maintaining physical health, we got to do some exercises. Otherwise not. So even if PQ we talk about, we are really not taking care 100% of it. We are only taking partial care. All right, to need to live has to be there. All of us agree about it. The second dimension of life is called EQ, emotional quotient. That is need to love. It's a need for every living entity to love, to be loved, which means to have healthy relationships. Let me give you an example. All of you imagine, let's create a hypothetical situation. You become the richest person in this creation, in this world. You own your own private island and you have the most and biggest mansion for yourself. You have everything at the tip of your finger that you can think of. You wish and it's there because you have all the money. Which means your PQ is more or less taken care. You have a good health also. You have a perfect financial security, you have a good health also. But there is a but. And what is that but? You are all alone in that mansion. You have nobody with you. You're all alone in that island. I mean, it may sound interesting for a while, but how many of you say after a while life will become boring? We need some relatives, we need some friends. So, need to love is a need which we cannot ignore. Healthy relationships. All right, you getting the point? That's about need to love, to be loved. The third quadrant of our life, or the dimension of our life, is intellectual quotient. This is need to learn. Back in 2010 or 2011, there was a research study done in America across the corporate houses, and where they came across the terminology midlife crisis in professional life. Does anyone know about midlife crisis in professional life? What does it mean? Would anyone like to tell? What is midlife crisis in professional life? It generally happens after the age of 40. What is midlife crisis in professional life? So there was a study that proved or that showed in the beginning of our professional career, our proficiency or efficiency in the office life depends or directly proportional to paycheck. If this is your paycheck and this is your proficiency, so as your paycheck increases, your proficiency increases, there is an exponential relationship. But after a certain time, then it becomes stagnant, which means proficiency does not increases regardless of how much you get paycheck. And this is what they call as midlife crisis. Are you getting this point? Which means money or paycheck does not inspire an employee anymore. And this is technically called as midlife crisis. Let me give you one real life case study that I had to deal with. This is our CFO of Barclays who lives in Hinjawadi, who was part of our community and attending our programs, had been connected for several years. And post COVID, around 2022, being in a position of such a reputed position with such a company, Barclays, he resigned. And he sat in his home jobless for 6 months. And I didn't knew about it because we had a little less interaction that time because of what was happening with the COVID. And finally, when I got a chance to meet with him, and then he told me that I have quit my job. I said, why? And his answer was exactly the same as the study back in 2010 and 11, which was published. It said, how money would not give you more inspiration. Why? Because after a while in your professional career, sometimes people they feel mentally stagnant. They find their job boring. There is no more growth. And his answer was, you know what? I have been doing this job. It had become too monotonous. There was no fun. And most importantly, there was no learning. I really got bored. So I said, how do you plan to manage your family? Because now you have lived a pretty lavish life. Your expenditure anyway is going to be high. And you don't have a job. You don't have a salary. So he said, I'm looking for some other options. And now he has gone to Dubai. He has started a business. Year or 2 years before, Dubai started the taxing system. So he's working on the taxing system, helping the corporates how to evaluate and sort out their taxes like that. So he wanted some challenging situation. So the point is, we all have this need to learn. And not know, but I can tell you, psychologists know this very well. And the psychologists have really contributed in one particular thing in our life, that is social media apps. Let me take you 20, 25 years back. Around 2000, 2005, around that 5 years of time, Orkut was launched. I don't know if anyone of you are aware of it also. You might be pretty young that time. This was a product by Google. This was a social media product. And I was in a college life that day, so we created our profile, etc. 2006-07, I went to America. And around 2006, Orkut closed down. There was no more business for it. Nobody was showing interest. By 2005 or 2004, Facebook was launched. And within a very short span of time, Facebook went viral. And now today, Mark Zuckerberg, right? He's one of the wealthiest person where he have hardly created any physical product. He just has a software. And he is the richest person right now. Now, why Facebook went viral? If in case you have been using Facebook for let's say over a decade or so, you will see how Facebook have went through changes. When the Facebook was launched in the beginning, there was nothing called as notifications. Messages will come, you'll not get to know of it, but the moment smartphone came, and immediately notification will come, and you'll get a message, and immediately you'll go and see what has happened. How many of you agree, regardless of whatever you're doing, if there is a ring on the smartphone, your whole concentration goes on, who has messaged me? How many of you agree? 100% draws your attention. And that is how they created the notification system. Why? Because there was a group of, Facebook is known to be a company which have hired the maximum psychologists. It is not the developer team who gives the ideas of the product. The idea of the product comes from the psychologist because they understand how mind functions. And then, that later earlier they didn't have a Facebook wall concept. Now there is a concept of wall where anyone posts anything, it comes onto your wall, and it is something. It is like eternal, or it is a eternal wall. You keep on scrolling, it never ends. Why would somebody keep on scrolling, looking at a wall which may be your, but you have no information of yours in it? Any idea? How many of you have done it like this? Or how many have gone on Instagram Reels and spent half an hour together looking at different Reels? How many of you have gone into the Facebook wall and scrolling through looking at the pictures of your friends or maybe some unknown people, some Hollywood, Bollywood stars, and have spent a lot of time on it? How many of you have done it? Please raise your hand. Matter of fact is, it has to be 100%. You know why? Any thoughts why? The curiosity to know and need to learn. How many of you have, even if you have not understood the concept need to learn, but you recognize there is a curiosity to know? Yes? You're very eager to know what's happening in the world, what's happening in the lives of others. That is because of the IQ. This is need to learn. If we do not apply this in the right direction, by default we become a victim to these social media companies. They will take this need and fulfill this need by spending time on their application. However, if you are spending your time thoughtfully on cultivating and taking care of this IQ, I can tell you, you would not have any dependency on the social media. Because generally we go there for two things, for emotional gratification and for intellectual satisfaction. Need to know, like that. And the fourth thing is about spiritual quotient. That is need to create a legacy. What is a spiritual quotient? It teaches us, it helps us to realize who am I. It tells us the purpose of life. And it tells us three things very important. Please write down. For any manager and lead, you would need these three things to build up your team. It's called as NIC. N-I-C. N stands for needs. I stands for interests. And C stands for concerns. You can only have an effective team building when you know the needs, interests, and concerns of your team members. Then only there can be some harmony or coherence. And before you can know the need, interest, and concerns of others, it is very important to have that awareness about the self, to know my own needs, interests, and concerns. And that is where the spiritual quotient or spiritual well-being comes into picture. What is a spiritual well-being? A situation where there is a level of self-awareness. What are my needs? What are my interests? What are my concerns? I would not ask you this. I know it's going to be very difficult to do it, but take it as an homework. Write down your needs, interests, and concerns, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be very challenging. I've done it many times, and it looks like, wrecking to the brain, but we can't figure it out. What do I want? What are my interests? What are my concerns? So try it out. So spiritual practice gives us clarity of life, level of self-awareness. Second, clarity about the purpose. Where am I headed to? What do I really want to do in my life? Unless that is clear, midlife crisis is inevitable. And connection with something larger than life, rather than being a competitor, becoming a cooperator in this whole divine system of the Lord and becoming an instrument. So what creates quality of life? There has to be a vibrant health and economic security. Imagine you have poor health, you lack financial security. Maybe if you have that, but if you are isolated or alienated, you have no relationships, or you really cannot build relationship with others, again that will create a vacuum. Even if you have that, but intellectually you feel stagnant, you don't feel sense of growth, again you will feel frustrated. Even if you have that, but if you lack sense of purpose, if you lack sense of awareness about yourself, again you will be searching for what's the goal of my life. So we need all the four things. So what creates quality of life? Physical quotient, need to live, vibrant health, economic security, rich and satisfying relationship, ongoing personal and professional development, and a deep sense of purpose, contribution to society, and personal congruence. Now, this four dimensions of life is also called as circle of life. Please draw a circle and draw a diameter across it. And across the perpendicular lines, on the end of it, write down PQ, EQ, IQ, SQ. This is called as circle of life or wheel of life. At the ends of it, at the ends of your diameter, please write down PQ, EQ, IQ, SQ. So here is my next question to all of you. What is your current balance across PQ, EQ, IQ, and SQ? Can you please reflect on it? What is your current balance? In other words, balance means you need to give time for all the four things. Are you on a weekly basis, not daily basis, but on a weekly basis, are you able to give any attention to your physical health? Physical health means good food, healthy diet, sleeping in time, or let's say adequate sleep, some physical exercise. Financial security means, working towards that goal. You are a student right now, investing your money properly, or utilizing the money properly. That's about your PQ. About EQ, are you spending quality time with your friends and family members who really matter to you? And IQ, I'm not referring to IQ as academic book. That you will anyways do it. For IQ, we need to have some books. Remember last time I gave an example of Elon Musk, Nelson Mandela, I spoke about Arjuna. Reading about their lives is a great sense of inspiration that can really, really give us a lot of relief and direction for our life. So always have one book which adds inspiration to your life. Don't study just for the sake of academic, which is good, but some book which you read which gives you direction to your life. If you need some name list, I'll give you my favorite name list for you. And then that's about IQ, and SQ is spending some time for meditation, self-reflection, maintaining a gratitude journal, or writing a diary. How was my day? What I wish to do, etc. Or having some time for meditation and prayer. So this is about PQ, IQ, SQ. Can you please think about it and say, how is your life balanced across these four dimensions of life? And which area do you think is, maybe you can score this in three parameters. Uh, you pay attention on regular basis. That is first option. You rarely pay attention. And third option, no attention. Then you'll get to know about the balance of life to these four dimensions. It'll give you some clarity what is missing in my life or what needs attention. So first, regularly paying attention. Second, hardly pay attention. And third, no attention. It does not exist in my life right now. Can you give yourself 1, 2, 3 in that basis? Point 1, regularly you pay attention. Point number 2, you rarely pay attention. And point number 3, it doesn't exist in my life. Can you take a look at it? If this circle is called as a wheel of life and one of the dimensions are missing, then can you imagine what would be the wheel of life would be? How would the chakra look like? Imagine putting this wheel in your four-wheeler or in a two-wheeler. How would be your life? It will be jerky. You can't even move smoothly. What about picking up a speed? And therefore, it is very, very important here. So my question here is, hopefully you've done through this, or maybe you need a minute. I can give you maybe a few seconds to look into it. Kindly reflect on it. How well are you doing in terms of managing the four dimensions of life? Has it been taken care or not? Okay. If in case you have realized something is missing in your life right now, all of you are, you've gone through your engineering and whatever bachelors. We all know some time management tools. Can you draft a strategy for yourself? How would you bring this thing into your life so that it has been taken care? Some time-based strategy. For example, let's say physical exercise, I'll now start allocating 15 minutes per day in my schedule. That's called scheduling. Can you just do some scheduling for it? What would be the strategy to bring about a balance in your life? And based on that, then I'll give you some strategies, some option for strategy. How would you bring a balance in your life? How would you take care of all the four dimensions? Think of some strategy, time-based strategy, because we have to spend time for everything, isn't it? What can you probably do? What can you probably do to fit in all these activities in your day? These are the big rock that we're going to take care. We need to take care of. Maybe for the timing, some of the things may not have time because you have your exams, project deadlines. But what about rest of the time? What about rest of the semester? What strategy can you have for yourself to take care of this? Any solutions? What can you do to find harmony across the four dimensions? Need to live, need to love, need to learn, and need to create a legacy. Yeah, what is that strategy? What will you do for that? How are you going to do? First of all, you have to understand what are the things that I need to fill in my life to take care of the four things. As I said, for PQ, you got to have exercise, got to have balanced diet, as well as a good night rest. For EQ or emotional health, you have to spend some time for relationship building and taking care. For IQ, intellectual growth, apart from academics, have some wisdom books that you can read, and it will automatically reduce your time spent on social media. And for spiritual growth, regular spiritual practices like meditation, prayer, etc. So, a question to all of you, based on your current time schedule, is it really possible to accommodate all the four dimensions in your day schedule? Yes or no? Okay. How many of you say not possible? Life is so busy right now. Can you raise your hand, please? अरे आप शर्माओ मत हाथ खड़ा करके इतने नीचे उड़ कर दिया. Please raise your hand. That's okay. That's possible. Some of you, maybe the life is busy. How many of you say it's possible to manage all the four dimensions in my daily schedule? Okay, many of you. Let me give you a strategy and a tool that you can use it that will help you in the long run. This is called as Eisenhower decision matrix. Anyone knows of it? How many of you know of it? Raise your hand. Only 3, 4 of you knows. Some of you know over here. All right, a very important tool for those who are struggling with it. You can manage it if you follow the tool. You can create a time for yourself to do the things that you want to do it. This is called as Eisenhower decision matrix. You'll have to create another quadrant for yourself. Please make another 4 dimensions or the quadrant, and we'll begin to talk about it. The first quadrant is do, second quadrant is decide, third quadrant is delegate, and fourth quadrant is delete. Just make a 4 quadrant right now. And actually it is across the X and Y axis of, on the X axis it is urgent, not urgent, and across the Y axis, positive Y is important, negative Y is not important. All right? Positive Y important, negative Y not important. Positive X not urgent, and negative X urgent. Have you given the marking or directions? Okay. If this is done, now take a deep breath and think about at least, let's say, 10 to 15 activities that you do on a regular basis. What all do you do across the day? Please write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to put all of those in these boxes. Okay? What all do you do across the day? Please write down. Don't write in the quadrant, okay? Don't put it in the box right now. Write it separately. And we'll try to place it around in the boxes. Please go ahead. Around 10 to 15 activities that we do. For example, sleeping. Then we have our breakfast, lunch, and dinner to eat. All right? Maybe attending classes. Like different activities. Can you please write down around 10 to 15 activities that you do on a regular basis? Spending time on social media, chatting with friends, going out for shopping or picnic, something, whatever. Please write down around 10 to 15 activities that you do on a daily basis. And then we'll take a look at this matrix, how it functions. Do not write in the box or the quadrant right now. Just create a separate list of your actions or activities. What are your activities that you have in a day? Because all of you said, I have so much to do, but there's no time. We're trying to create some time for all of you. Trying to create a work-life balance. You need to really ask your friends about what you do in a day. Not so much chit-chatting is required. How many of you can write down or could write down around 10 activities in a day that you do? Please raise your hand. Some of you Others are finding it difficult to think about the activities that they have. Really? So much you do for the physical well-being. All right, you can do it at your leisure. I'll give you how this matrix function. All right, everyone, attention. Thank you for your spending time to do this exercise. So what does this four quadrant refers to? Quadrant one refers to the things that we got to attend to it immediately, urgently. Quadrant two is something which we need to schedule. Quadrant three, which we need to ask others to do it. And quadrant four, which we have to stop doing it. Let's take a look at the activities which falls under this four quadrants. What are the activities that can fall under the fourth quadrant? Delete or junk it. Not necessary for me. It's a time waster and doesn't add any value to my life. Any such activity? Social media. Okay, social media. Scrolling on the social media. Spending time on internet. Maybe just going for shopping for no reason. Spending too much time with friends, chatting about, it doesn't add value. So certain activities like this, we have to remove it. But the challenge is we are emotionally very attached. Logically, it is very easy to know what is right, what is wrong. But do the right is very difficult because we find satisfaction in that. That's the thing. What is the second activity? Delegate. Can you think of any activity which doesn't require your expertise and maybe you can give it to somebody else where you can use that time to solve more complex problems? Maybe not in a student life, maybe think from the professional life point of view. What could be that activity that you can delegate it out? Where it doesn't require your time and energy. Not as a student, but as a professional you can think of it. Anything? Where it doesn't require your time and energy. Cleaning. Okay, cleanliness, laundry. Yeah, I mean, laundry or something, which you can give it out, fine, you don't have to, save your time. But in the professional life, maybe not in student life, but in professional life, you'll find a great challenge with delegation. You might even have a subject on delegation. The challenge in delegation is, first, is an insecurity. If I give my task to somebody else, and if they learn it better, then what will happen to me? That's an insecurity. And second risk that a person faces in delegation is the fear, can that person do it well or not? But you cannot really live your life if you don't learn to delegate. A manager and a leader works only with delegation. You cannot do everything by yourself. All right, what is it that decide, schedule a time to do it? These are the activities which are not urgent, but these are very important for your long-term goals. And they have to be scheduled. And what are these activities? The four dimensions of life. The PQ, EQ, IQ, SQ. For this, you got to put a schedule. You need to create a timetable where you put into it. And finally, what is this? And by the way, what is the challenge here after we create a schedule? The challenge is of follow, which means self-discipline. If you want to follow your schedule, you have to have certain amount of self-discipline. And finally, do it now are those activities like project deadlines, exam preparation and whatnot. It is both important and urgent. We have no other alternative, but we got to do it. So, why we started with the proactive leadership? Because if you want to manage your time properly, we have to have a proactive mindset, which means we are willing to change and follow. Can everyone repeat along with me? Let's read together. All of you can see this? So let's read it together. By proactively organizing your time loudly and focusing on the important tasks together. By proactively organizing your time, focusing on the important tasks, you should do fewer things, but those which are of the utmost importance. The Eisenhower matrix remains an excellent tool to help you set your priorities right, manage your time effectively. Let me say the last line. Regularly revisiting, which means on a weekly basis, you can go and look back into this Eisenhower matrix. So you can begin a day or begin your week by writing down your activities which you think you have to do it on a weekly basis. Put it into this quadrant and then see a week later how did you do it. Were you able to do it or not, and what realignment you have to do it. This is a very powerful tool to help you manage your priorities. This will help you deal with your insecurity with delegation, emotional attachment with social media, and problem with self discipline, because now you know where I need to make an improvement. Some other side strategies for time management is creating a to-do list. How many of you here write a to-do list for on daily basis? Anyone? It's a very important tool. If you have a lot of things to do, start your day with a to-do list. Spend 5 minutes and write on the most important things that need to be done. And if you're able to take care of the most important thing at the end of the day, you'll be far relaxed because you know that things have been taken care. Second thing is calendars, scheduling things. And third, time blocking, which means let's say your class, that's like time blocking your calendar. And the fourth aspect is you can use some productivity apps. These are some tools only for priority management, but they will only work when you understand the importance of it and when you're willing to take help of it. And if you think I don't need it, my life is all good, then none of these tools will come handy. It's just a food for thought for all of you. If you wish, either the Eisenhower matrix or the to-do list or the calendar, you can take any of the tool, try using it for a week for yourself and see did it make any difference to your life or not. If yes, continue using it. If not, go to the another tool. This is some of the proactive tools that I can give you, but it depends on your ability to bring about change for yourself. And one quick thing about procrastination before I'm going to put you on a break and maybe have some role plays after this. What is this topic of procrastination? Procrastination is something which we all do it. It's something even I do it regardless of even if I speak of it. It's just unavoidable in life. But let me give you one example of the dangers of procrastination in a student life. I studied at Vellore University. This is almost 20, 25 years ago. And I had a friend from Hyderabad. He had a very peculiar nature. Every semester, our college will give us a diary, and which will have a whole semester schedule. The first day of every semester, my dear friend will spend his time in preparing his 6 month schedule. He was very ritualistic about it. It was his family tradition, which he just cannot never break it. Only thing that he could never do it was follow the schedule. Not even for a single day. And very religiously, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh semester, even the eighth semester, he did that. It was something which he has to do. And it was something which he will never going to follow. It was part of his system. Now, I believe it, I don't know now, but in those days in engineering life, the eighth semester used to be the project work. And you have to go out of the campus, go to some company, do a 6 months project work, right? All of you, those who are from engineering background, you still have that? So I remember we all went out to different places in India for different research labs to do our project work, except for this boy. He never went anywhere. And after 3 months, students began to come back. I remember I returned in the 8th semester at the end of the 5th month, and this boy was still sitting in the campus and just going through with his life. And this is the time when we didn't even had social media apps. Even internet never used to work those days. I don't know what he did sitting in the campus. Now we have a month remaining. We all are finishing our project report, which is the essential for graduation. 4 weeks turns into 2 weeks. This person even have not thought about the title of the project. Forget about doing the project work. 2 weeks turn into 1 week. No progress from his side. He is living his life. And a week turns into 3 days. 3 days before the project deadline, he wakes up. Oh ho, kaam karna hai. And then he did something which is humanly impossible, not advisable. 3 days straight, he did not sleep. 3 days straight, he sat through and wrote his fiction report. It was a fiction story. He hadn't done anything. And thank God there was no chat GPT that time. Otherwise, I can tell you, knowing this guy, he would have started his project work only half an hour before. Knowing very well, chat GPT will give him something. So, 3 days before he started working, and 3 days he wrote something, and he sprinted across the campus, and he was the last person to jump and duck and finally submit his project report before the window closed. All right, the things are done. And now, 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, our results started to come for the project report like this. We are all sitting in the hostel. We are now preparing to wind up our room and to leave to our respective places. One fine day, he comes and knocks on my door. And I was sitting with a group of my friends, and these are all toppers, top 10 students like this. And we had the topper also sitting there. This friend of mine knocks on the door. I open the door. He says, "Guys, I have some great news to tell you." I said, "Yes, please come in. Tell us what's the great news." So we had our Dean of Electronics and Communication branch, who was a very, very known person in those days across India. He was a retired dean or director from IIT Delhi of the same branch. He had many, many famous research papers on his name and many PhD students. And he was very strict. When we were there across all over 4 years, he never interacted with us, although we were in top 10. And this guy comes and tells, "You will not believe, today morning, the dean called me up." You should have looked at the face of the toppers. They're like, "Acha, हमें तो कभी तो phone नहीं करा." We were getting the first 2, 3 ranks. He never looked at us and he called you up. So they didn't say anything. That was the expression. And then we asked, "Oh, really? Why did he call you up?" Although I was also feeling a sense of insecurity. I said, "Why did he call you up?" He said he called me up to tell me that out of my 30 or 40 odd years of experience, I have never read such a fantastic project report as yours. Now, you are surprised. वो टॉपर रोने वाला था. उसकी आंखों में बस आंसू आने वाले थे जो टॉपर बैठा हुआ था. And he was thinking, what? I spent my 6 months working so hard. This guy started his project report 3 days before. How is this possible? There was a pin drop silence. Nobody knew how to react. Even I was shocked. And after a few moments of silence, he looked at all of us and he began to laugh. And I asked him, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "Guys, I was joking." And we said, "What? What do you mean?" He said, "Dean called me up. And he said, 'You rascal, you fool number one, what did you write?'" I just wanted to experience that expression on your face when you thought, "This guy is too smart." That's the reason I joked about it. And long story short, why he got that special favor from the dean when he got the chastisement? Because he just never took up on the project work. And he just kept on procrastinating. Unfortunately, the dean did not graduate him. He failed him for that semester. He had to go back and do the project work it out, and come back and submit it like this. So procrastination is something, how many of you had an experience that during the college life, burning the midnight lamps, suddenly during the exam we could realize, "Oh ho, ये subject भी था? Oh, इसकी teacher भी थी कोई? कुछ पढ़ाई भी हुई है?" How many of you had that experience? Please raise your hand. And suddenly a day before the exam, you're running across the hostel, asking friends, "कुछ notes मिलेंगे क्या? थोड़ा तो बताओ college में क्या हुआ है?" And then you go in front of the examination center, and then you look at the paper. कुछ हो गया है, कुछ होने वाला है, या सब कुछ नया है, सब कुछ अलग है. These are real-time songs that we sang many times in our engineering days. And that's how procrastination really, really causes damage. We'll take a look at procrastination, what it is. Types of procrastination is consequences, and the remedy for it after 10 minutes of break. Hare Krishna. Enjoy your break. So as part of our first part of presentation today, Hare Krishna, kind attention, settle down please. We have half an hour more before breaking. So as a part of our first presentation, time management, a misnomer, we kind of highlighted the importance of priority management. And to help you identify your priorities, we discussed the concept called as 4 dimensions of life. Anyone remembers what are the 4 dimensions of life? Yeah. That's a very commonly used word. What is the other way we call it? 4L. What are the 4Ls? To live, to learn, to love, to learn, and to create a legacy. Our often attention goes to need to live, but very few or less attention to need to love, need to learn, and no attention need to create legacy. And this is something very important. If you don't take care of it, it will always have some kind of, that experience. Even if you have wealth, even if you have success, there's always something missing in life. It's just because you have not taken care of four essential needs. After talking about these four essential needs or the big rocks, we talked about a tool, a solution for managing your priorities. Anyone remembers what was the tool to manage your priorities? The Eisenhower matrix. What was the matrix about? What are the four quadrants of the matrix? Okay, okay, yeah, that way. What was the names for it? Do it, schedule it, delegate it, and delete it. So this is the answer, or this is a tool to help you schedule your or manage your priorities. Just understanding time management is not about managing time but priorities. We also need to know how to manage priorities. What was the challenge with deleting things which are non-essential for us? Our emotional attachment. What was the challenge with delegating tasks? Fear, insecurity. Fear or insecurity about the success of other person, and the fear that the other person probably cannot do it well. What was the problem with scheduling activities? Yeah, following because of lack of self discipline. Lack of self discipline. And the first quadrant, do it because it's a crisis situation, we have to do it. So let me ask you a simple question. If you often do your activities in a crisis situation, what do you think about the productivity or the proficiency of your action? Would it increase? Would it remain same? Or would it reduce? How many of you say if you function in crisis zone, your performance will reduce? So that's the reason. Oftentimes we live our life in a crisis and we think that is how the life has to be. We don't put our attention, we don't put our enough energy, despite having all the skill set, despite having all the abilities within us, we are not using those God-given abilities to the full extent because we have not learned to manage our priorities. Even if you have got the sense of managing priorities, then there's a big challenge called as procrastination. And before going to a break, I gave you an example of how in student life we keep on procrastinating on different things and how it affects our life. So my question to all of you is, procrastination is something which is known to all of us. Can you think of anything how or what are the consequences of procrastination could be? What would be the consequence of procrastination? What will procrastination do to your personal and professional life? Okay, so which means I will be most of the time in crisis zone because the work have increased a lot. Frustration, crisis. What does procrastination lead to? Stress, reduced efficiency. What else? Regret, failure, miss the opportunity. What does procrastination lead to? Reactive actions. What does procrastination lead to? Yes? Life becomes troublesome. Anything else? What does procrastination lead to? Yes? Yeah, less productivity. So I'll give all this thing into three categories. Yes? Mental stress. Procrastination, Lord Shri Krishna talks about. There is a beautiful verse in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, give up three things in your life. I'm not going to go from the perspective of Bhagavad Gita. I'll give you a simple English. If you want, we'll be soon giving out a copies of Bhagavad Gita to all of you. Then you can refer. It's the 4th chapter, verse number 10. Three things Krishna asks to give up. It's called Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. Viga Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. Raga means attachment. Bhaya means fear. And Krodha means anger. I will not have a time to really explain you this concept, but I'll give you the three consequences which are born from this particular statement of Krishna. And if you wish, I would highly recommend you to write down these three things. And from the perspective of these three things, look at all the procrastination does to you. It will always fall into these three things. because Krishna have clearly identified it. Let's take a look at it. The first thing that procrastination does is not chronologically, but I'm just making a point. What it does is not fulfilling one's commitment. How many of you agree for a leader, subordinates have to have trust at him? Yes or no? Yes or no? Unless subordinates have trust, what is the question of being a leader? How do you create a trust profile? If only you fulfill your commitments. Yes? Unless you fulfill your words, what you say, can you create a trust profile? So procrastination leads to not fulfilling one's commitments. And to help you remember these three consequences, I'm going to give you three case studies so that you can remember. We gave you one, like for modes of material nature, we gave you a case study of Ravan, Vibhishan, and Kumbhakaran. Not fulfilling one's commitment, what it does, procrastination can lead to missed opportunities and negatively impact relationships. Let's take a classic example. Anyone can figure out what's happening here? Who all are there? Lord Ram with and and Ram is shaking hands with whom? Ram is shaking hands with Sugriv. This is a sign we signed a pact between each other. And Hanumanji is standing behind. This is a pact between Ram and Sugriv because Ram and Sugriv were both in the similar situation. Both of their wives were missing. So Ram promised Sugriv that I'll help you gain your kingdom to you. I'll help you get your wife back to you. And Sugriv said, I will assist in finding your wife. So all of you know the story. Long story short, Lord Ram kills the elder brother of Sugriv because he has also forcefully have taken up the kingdom of Sugriv and have also taken away the wife of Sugriv, which actually happens to be like his daughter. And Lord Ram punishes Wali. Sugriv becomes the king again. He goes back to his kingdom Kishkinda. And now it was Sugriv's turn to fulfill his promise. But the time came to fulfill the promise, it began rainy season. Lord Ram sent a message, Sugriv, let's wait for 4 months. Let's wait for 4 months. Sugriv said, yes, Ram, whenever you are ready, I'm ready. I'll come back after 4 months. 4 months of rainy season passed. 4 months became 4.5 months. And it almost was about to become 5 months. But there was no information about Sugriv. Nobody from the Sugriv side came to meet Lord Ram and Lakshman, who at that time living in the caves. Lakshman becomes extremely angry. And he said, Ram, I'm going to go and punish Sugriva. And Lord Ram pacified Lakshman. Long story short, finally Lakshman went and chastised Sugriv. And then Sugriv realized his mistake. What was the mistake of Sugriv? Why he didn't fulfill his commitment? Did he wanted to cheat Ram? Yes or no? He was genuine in his pact. He really wanted to do it. Then why did he fail to fulfill his promise or commitment? Anyone knows? Okay, procrastination. What's the reason? What's the reason? That's a consequence. Anyone knows? Nobody have read Ramayana here, looks like, okay? Hopefully you probably would have watched it. So why did Sugriv didn't fulfill the promise? हाँ, वो अपने सुख में चले गए थे. This was the story with Sugriv. You know what is it called as? Instant gratification monkey. Where we prioritize short-term pleasures over long-term goals. Let me help you understand this. I will request those who are stepping in, they should sit down wherever they find a space, because when you cross students, it distracts everyone. Or else you should turn up in time, all right? Or else if you come late, you should sit right in the front. All right. Let me give you an example. Imagine you have scheduled a time for today evening, 6 o'clock, 6 to 7, you're going to sit and study. You marked into your calendar, you reach your room, you open the book, and you studied for, let's say, 7 minutes. And after 7 minutes, you begin to feel thirsty. After 10 minutes, you begin to feel hungry. After 15 minutes, you were having suicidal thoughts. इतना देर हो गया पढ़ते पढ़ते, कितनी भूख लग रही है, कितनी प्यास लग रही है. And after 20th minute, you decide, I need some water. I'm studying for so long. And imagine you get up, you go to the water cooler or to the fridge to fetch a water. But you never come back. You got lost either talking to your friends, or either you took out a smartphone, started checking on the messages. How many of you had, not even like this, but similar experience, We decided for something, but then you forgot about it, got lost. How many of you had that? And the answer was instant gratification monkey, which means giving priority to short-term pleasure over long-term goal. Are you getting this point? Similarly, Sugriv got so much caught up in the pleasures of the kingdom that he forgot about his commitment. So next time when you fail in your commitment, remember Sugriv. And remember how Lakshman was about to punish Sugriv. He spoiled his relationship, and in a professional life, you will spoil your professional growth. Is it making sense? So, because of sensual pleasures, Krishna says something very interesting about in Bhagavad Gita: self discipline. We'll repeat this, all right? Bandhuratma atmanastasya. Everyone loudly. Yena atmaeva atmana jitaha. Anatmanastu shatrutve. Vatetatmaeva shatruva. Bandhu means friend, Shatru means enemy. And Krishna is saying, if your mind is under your control, Jitaha means conquered. If you have conquered your mind, the mind is best of your friends. If you have failed to control your mind, the mind becomes the worst of your enemy. So when you're talking about lack of self-discipline, is dependent on our state of mind. Are we getting influenced by mind, or are we influencing our mind? So that's the point Krishna says here. Self-discipline that begins with training our mind and trying to control our mind. And that's how we can counter this consequence of procrastination, means not fulfilling one's commitments. All right, second consequence of procrastination: avoidance of one's duty. Have you ever had an experience where you had to do something, but you just didn't do it? How many of you had that experience? You had to do something, but you just didn't do it. Let me give you a simple example. You remember those days when you had to solve trigonometry? If while solving the problem, if it was solvable, how many of you felt at that point of time you felt mathematics is my favorite subject because it is getting solved? And the moment you got stuck and you were not able to solve, for the next 3 days, you didn't look at the mathematics. Yes or no? Why did you stop solving the problem? There is only one reason, and the reason is fear. And the fear has two components here. Why we don't do something when we find a problem complex? When we find a problem complex to solve, then we take shelter of short-term pleasure because we don't really want to spend energy on it. And the second reason why we don't do what we are supposed to do, because fear of failure. Maybe I will not succeed in it, therefore I should not do it. And that's the reason we avoid doing. Procrastination is just a side factor. There is a far deeper going within us because of which we are not doing these things. And a classic example to help you remember this is Arjuna on the battlefield. That's a copy of Bhagavad Gita over there. Arjuna comes out on the battlefield. He has been preparing for it. Forget about preparing it. He had defeated Kaurava's armies twice before. And now something suddenly happens. He comes on the battlefield. He sees his relatives. And now he says, I'm not going to fight. Why? Because he was fearful. One of the reasons he gives for not fighting is, Krishna, I am fearful. Fearful not that I would get killed. Fearful is the consequence of the war is destruction. What is the point? For all of you, it could translate into fear of failure or fear of complexity. Because the nature of our mind is it always wants to take an easy way out. Doesn't want to solve or tackle the complex thing. But please understand, as part of your MBA training, if you don't take to handling the complex situations, what will you do in your professional life? Because the professional life or the real life is going to put through you a lot of complex situations. And remember in the very first session, proactive leadership, I was making a point. It is not what you know determines how successful you would be. It is how fast you make the right decision will determine how successful you will become in your life. And how fast decision means your ability to solve problems, even the complex problem. So Bhagavad Gita in this regard teaches us, never say quit. Always face your challenges. Never, never run away. And in this regard, we'll be discussing about this verse later on, but I'll give you one simple concept of it. Let's repeat after me, everyone together. Karmanevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan ma karma phal hetubhur mate sangasta karmani. Here Krishna gives 4-point formula how to do your duties. Either be a student life, any responsibility. First, be dutiful. Second, be detached from the result. Do you know why in the student life or in your professional life, the reason of stress? The stress arises largely because of our attachment to result. And when we think we are not meeting that result, it leads to stress. And we become stressful only about thinking about the result, but not trying to do anything to get the results. So Krishna says, if you want to do work properly, be detached from the idea of result. Third, become a cooperator rather than competitor. And the fourth, give up your laziness. In other words, work without attachment to results, then you will not give up your duty. And the third, you might not face it now. This is particularly for leaders. It's for those in their responsible position or their job profile is to make decisions or their job profile is to resolve conflicts. But these are the three things that Krishna says give up, which are the direct consequences of procrastination. Everything that procrastination can do will fall into these three categories. At least that's what I analyzed and found. Third is delays in decision making and conflict resolution. Why would you delay in decision making? You know the word nepotism, which means attachments. And let me give you a classic example. Who do you see on the screen here? Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. Everyone told Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra is like Stephen Ellop, Nokia CEO. He at the end of the war said the same thing. We never did anything wrong. And everyone told them, to say you never did wrong is not the right answer. The problem is you never did anything right. You're supposed to take an action. Krishna told him, Vyasadev told him, Bhishmita told him, Vidura told him, and here Gandhari is pleading to Dhritarashtra, please tell your son to return the kingdom of Pandavas back. And every time Dhritarashtra would say, मैं अपने बच्चों को बहुत प्रेम करता हूँ. How do I say no to my son? And Gandhari say, just say no. What's the big deal? Just say no. What is the thinking about how to say no? Stop crying. Say no. It doesn't listen to you. Put him behind the bars. You are a king. You can punish him. But he would never do it. Why? Because of his attachment. And the consequence of his delay in decision making or not resolving conflict led to one of the greatest war in the human history. Now, when I said this is very important for leadership, now when you don't take decisions in a timely manner, it can not only spoil your life, it can destroy the business. Remember Nokia CEO, Stephen Ellop? Remember the BlackBerry, RIM, the CEO, and many other companies. And why we don't do it? Attachments arising because of various factors. Here in case of attachment to his own family members, like that. And this is the verse that Krishna says, based on which we got these three consequences. Please repeat after me. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashritaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavamagataha. Give up raga, attachment. If you have attachment, you will not make decisions properly. Example, Dhritarashtra. Give up bhaya. If you are fearful, then what will you not do? Your duties. Example, Arjuna. Give up krodha. Kam Esha, Krodh Esha, Rajoguna Samudva. Krodha is younger brother of Kama, which means sensual desires. Give up Krodha means give up sensual desires. And what was it? Not fulfilling one's commitments. Sugriv and Ram. Not fulfilling one's commitment. So, not fulfilling one's commitment, Sugriv and Ram. Not doing one's duty, Arjuna. Not making the right decisions, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha, like this Krishna says. And in this verse, one who is able to give up this Raga, Bhaya, Krodha is the only person who can live in the present moment without worrying too much about the regrets of the past or thinking about the problems that are going to arise in the future. And in the present moment, can look at the situation and can act accordingly, embracing the present moment, like this Krishna says here. So, time is running short, I will not, but you can think based on these three things. You can reflect in your life when all you had kind of procrastinated or acted like this, and what was the consequence for it. Often it results into poor health, lack of professional growth, maybe not doing your academics properly. You all have left everything, your home and everything, come here for 2 years of your education. This is a time when you make or break your career. What you do today will determine what you become tomorrow. So how you live here today will create a reality for tomorrow. So these are some of the exercises. One last thing which we can do here for all of you to reflect on, because from here I'll be beginning my tomorrow's presentation. There are two factors which carve out our personality. There are two things which create a personality for us. That is called as psychological and an environmental factors. Can you just for a few seconds think about what could be the psychological or environmental factors that influences me from not doing the things that I have to do, or which leads to procrastination? To give you an example, I was having this conversation at Symbiosis. One of the students said, well, I want to do exercise, but I'm not able to do exercise. I asked him why. He said the gym is under repair in the Symbiosis campus. I said, well, that is a environmental factor. The gym is under repair. I said, well, gym is under repair, but the road is not under repair. You can run around the campus, do jogging. And for a second thought, oh yeah, I never thought about it. You get stuck to one thing and make that as the reason for not doing things. So if you have any situation, if you look at psychological environmental factors, you realize it just for a second puts it into the box which tells us you cannot function. And we'll discuss more in length tomorrow what are the psychological and environmental factors on that. So there are two types of procrastination. Procrastination for activities or situation that has deadlines. We talked about it. What are the consequences of it? What about the procrastination for the things and activities which comes without deadlines? Can you think about anything which has no deadline? When you procrastinate things or situation which comes with deadline, at least you will manage to do it because there is a deadline. Maybe your efficiency would not be so good. But can you think of things or activities that we do in our life which has no deadline? And if you procrastinate, what will happen? That will not talk about it. But any activity which has no deadline, that's procrastination. What is an activity which doesn't have a deadline? Physical well-being, daily exercise, there's no deadline. Great. What else? Sleep, okay. Mental stability, okay. Okay, yes. Yeah, exercise, physical exercise. Thinking about future activities. Don't go on the mental level. Activities which come with no deadlines. Your physical well-being, exercise, yoga, gymnastics, whatever it is. Spiritual activities, meditation, mindful exercises, doesn't have a deadline. What else doesn't have deadline? Eating or studying. Oh, well, studying may have some deadline, but eating or studying. On a regular basis. Agreed, agreed. All right. Eating and studying doesn't have deadline. What else? Learning doesn't have a deadline. What else? I have already given you the answer. The answer we have discussed at length. And all of you are stuck at only one level of thinking. And you all are stuck at PQ. Eating, sleeping, exercise. What about EQ? Does relationship comes with deadline? Does your learning come with deadline? Does your knowing yourself comes with deadline? These are the four essential things which you got to be doing. And interestingly, none of it comes with deadline. And if you don't attend to it, imagine what will happen to our life. So, to summarize this discussion, we all are procrastinator. Even I am a procrastinator. And it's nothing wrong to be a procrastinator. The good way of utilizing procrastination is procrastinate. Remember Eisenhower matrix? The delete task, those activities should be procrastinated. But other activities should be attended. We need to think about what we are really procrastinating about. And because everyone is procrastinating on something in life, we need to know of it. And most important thing, we talked about instant gratification monkey. Remember? We need to be aware of it. So next time when you sit down to study and you begin to feel thirsty, and after a few minutes you're hungry, and after a few minutes you're having suicidal thoughts, and finally you said enough is enough, I'm going to get up and get water. Immediately you should remember that monkey. And you should say, no, nothing going to happen to me. I'm going to sit down and continue with my study. And to give you one slogan for you to remember the subject matter, everything has a tagline. No, that's not our tagline. That's Nike's tagline. I'm going to give you a different tagline. And it really works. You know, with procrastination, we are always delaying to start the thing. So change this tagline from just do it. Just start it. Everyone loudly. Just start it. And that's how you can take up. So to conclude, what are the consequences of procrastination? 3 consequences. Don't give me the consequences, give me the case studies. What are the 3 case studies? 3 historical examples we talked about. Ram and Sugriv. What does Ram and Sugriv teaches us? Failing to fulfill one's commitment. Now you remember? What was the second case study? Okay, Dhritarashtra. What did Dhritarashtra teach us? Delays in decision making because of attachments. What was the third case study? Arjuna and Krishna. What does Arjuna teach us? That's a reason, cause. What does Arjuna teach us? Avoidance of one's duty because of fear of failure, fear of complexity, not insecurity. So thank you all for your kind attention. We end it over here. Hare Krishna. Tomorrow we'll be meeting at the same time and we'll be talking about the psychological factors and topic would be chaos to come. Hare Krishna.